The scenes in Season 1 of the East vs. West basketball game in The Wire are unique because the police realized that the majority of the areas where they usually perform their rip-and runs were unoccupied. Both sides of the city, young and old, were ironically worried about another game, if you will, not the game of selling drugs, but a basketball game. The strength of the sides were determined through hyper-masculinized basketball characters. However, The Wire usually has masculinity displayed via the white characters like Herc and McNulty. When we read Carroll's affirmative action, New Formations of White Masculinity, the character of the hero was often associated with hypermasculinity and whiteness. This scene is unique, since David Simon shows that for the people in the inner city of Baltimore, their hero relied in the pride they felt from these black athletes. You've watched The Wire, and in Season 1 there was a basketball game between East and West Baltimore. Why do you think they had a men's basketball game to determine which side of the city was better?
I think they had a men's basketball game just because they are shown as stronger people other than female, and that they did it just to show what side could have bragging rights to the other.
I feel like as if men's basketball or males' athletics are more appealing. They have more of an athletic factor attributed to their sport. Therefore, men like to watch men play.
I think basketball is just kind of one of those physical sports that people can show their dominance in their physical strength and mental strength. And coming out with a victory is just, a good thing for pride. So using a basketball game is just a good way to show, if you're better one day. I think it's something that a lot of people enjoy, so it's a really common ground. So the success that comes with that is, kind of widespread.
Why is basketball such a determinant of strength and masculinity?
I think it's a determinant of strength and masculinity because women are seen more weak than men, so men are more broadcasted than women, and then also they can get physical, not as extreme as some sports, but they can post up and box each other out with their strength and masculinity.
Basketball, it's such a physical sport, and men are at a young age encouraged to be physical people, and it just carries out a bunch of characteristics that gender encompasses.
I think basketball is so determined because it's been around so long, and it really brings a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of people from around the world together. So kind of like I said earlier, it's a common ground that people all really understand. It's universal, so having success in something like that where pretty much anybody is able to play it to some extent is a good way to kind of show, strength in a lot of different fashions.
Even though basketball is just as competitive for females, why would it be important for the show's writers to use only male players and coaches?
Probably, again, because more people see women as weak, and then also not a lot of people pay attention to women's sports, and they pay attention more to men's sports, so they would want someone to, instead of skipping over that scene, they want someone to be involved in it.
I think that's a cultural thing, and the fact that women's sports aren't necessarily seen as physical, as exhausting, as hard, actually. So I think men just represent strength, and that's what they chose to do. I don't think that if anybody saw a women's basketball game that they would really get a strong message of power from it.
These women in The Wire face struggles in the show, but they are a reflection of something bigger. In Jasbir Puar's terrorist assemblages, Homo Nationalism in Queer Times, Puar reminds us that even as the nation is trying to create stories of white exceptionalism, we do have to take a step back and recognize that our society is not completely post-racial. Some heroes may not in fact look exactly how we want them to look. Puar's term, Homo Nationalism, only emerges because of the segregation and disqualification of racial and sexual others from national imaginary. With people of different races in the Baltimore Police Department, we do not only see white officers as heroes. A character like Kima, whom is both black and a lesbian, began to be seen as a hero. The idea of heroism, however, is really just legitimized by her role as a police officer more than any of her other characteristics. The general lack of interest in women's sports relates to this concept because female athletes' roles are not legitimized by their gender, but rather the fact that they are athletes. In general, how do you think sports affects people's views on masculinity?
To use an example, I would use women's and men's lacrosse. Men are able to have pads and hit each other and basically like wrestle each other on the ground for a ball. But women are allowed to touch each other and just touch each other's sticks in that form. So I think that determines a lot. Not saying it's sexist, but it is kind of wrong.
I think sports are dominated by men. I think it's changing. I think that women are definitely getting a little more attention, a little more power. But I still think, there's the stereotype that men are stronger and bigger and faster. And that's kind of seen in sports like lacrosse, where women can't even hit each other without getting a foul. Or in the women's game of basketball when the ball is smaller. So it's just, there are subtleties that kind of push men towards being more superior. They're going away, but it's definitely still there.
And what about race? How do you think sports affects people's views on race?
Sports affects people's views about race because they think most of the time black people are the ones who can jump, are the ones involved in basketball, but then white people are the ones that are supposed to be involved in like lacrosse or field hockey. So race definitely determines that.
I think the really cool thing about sports is that it brings everyone together. So I think that it's a place of comfort for a lot of different races, and you can turn to it, when there's something going wrong. When you play sports, you're going to have people of different races on your team. It's depending on the sport, but it's becoming a lot more unsegregated, desegregated. So it's a really comforting place. I know, at least from my personal perspective and my experience, it's been a really good place that I've learned about diversity and really loving the fact that I can be comfortable in a space with a lot of different people.
Since you've watched The Wire, in Season 4, boxing is used as an escape for boys' urban troubles. Did you or anyone you know use basketball or sports as a way to escape troubles in their neighborhood or home life?
I did know a couple people from my hometown that used basketball as a way to get out of their cities because they weren't too good, and even football. A lot of people in my neighborhood use football as too. And then my mom always says that if you're not playing a sport or like doing anything, you're just setting yourself up to like go be somewhere where you're not supposed to be.
I think there are a lot of people at my high school. I went to a public school in Durham, and a lot of my guy friends especially were caught up in gang life. And, there was one coach in particular who actually focused a lot. He started a group for inner city boys and kind of brought them to basketball. And it was just really cool to see the effect that it had on these kids who, had this hard home life, but they can put their time and their joy, their hard work into sport, and it just changed them. It was really, really cool to see.
Why are there no girls in Cuddy's Boxing Club? Would a character like Zenobia benefit? Cuddy's Boxing Club was very beneficial for a lot of the boys in Tillman Middle School and in the inner cities of Baltimore. Besides the fact that boxing is already male-dominated and hyper-masculinized, having a female character would seem out of place. I believe the creators of the show would not put in a character like Zenobia in Cuddy's Club, not only because she's female, but maybe to even promote the dynamics and strengths of some of the female characters. The women and mothers in the show, like Donette, Delonda Bryce, and Brianna Barksdale, have a lot of influence on the drug empire and influence on their families. Even Randy's foster mother has a lot of power over him. Moreover, not having any females benefiting from the use of boxing or any sport as an escape could be a testament to the individual strength of these women. This is especially true since, in the end, Zenobia ends up back from the corner boy class and in her regular classes, attentive and with no disturbances. Overall, I believe the creators of The Wire did an excellent job of addressing race and masculinity. I think the idea that sports can be used as a way out of a troubling urban life was mentioned but not really expanded upon. Whether it was the young man that Avon liked for the East versus West basketball game, or whether it was the emergence of Cuddy as a patriarchal figure to young boys in the boxing club, the viewer saw glimpses of how sports, race, and masculinity merged together. David Simon wanted to create the idea of colorblindness when it comes to race, but I'm sure there are a few white young males that struggle with the same urban issues but were never shown. Diversity in sports helps to counter the issues of race, but we cannot get to see that aspect within the show. The other theme I discussed was masculinity, and masculinity in sports is still an issue, especially because boys use sports as an escape more than girls. If this is the case, what are the ways in which girls can escape life on the corner? Someone like Snoop is masculinized, but we unfortunately did not get the luxury of seeing how she ended up where she did. She's an example that women can easily get caught up in this drug life, but the show never addressed that well enough. So I think that's something that could be expanded upon in the future.